whenever you spend $115 million minimum on a film and it makes 8.8 million its opening weekend, you know you got a problem. Whenever you start out with the first 10 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes giving you a perfect 0% of love, you know you've got a problem. And you know the only way you were able to get off that zero is because Grace Randolph lost her mind. You know you've got a problem. So look, this Borderlands film is such a disaster. I'm trying to see if we got global numbers yet. We do. 9.9 million.
Ooh, that is
You know what?
bad.
That won't even cover the honey wagons.
Yeah. You know how
No.
bad it is?
Wow.
This movie right here, I have checked the entire island I'm at. There is not one English language screening. It's only in small screens and it's only dubbed to Spanish, meaning I'll be sitting it out. This is the first, like, big, well, second only to Godzilla Year One, but that was different because the native language in that one is Japanese. But other than that, like every single English language movie where I'm at right now, fine, I have to go an hour and a half on the bus, but there is a cinema showing movies in English. They didn't put this one up. They just couldn't be bothered because they knew there wasn't demand. It's like, fine, there's that one foreign guy in the capital, meaning me. And evidently wasn't demand enough even to put this into an English language cinema. It's unbelievable. I couldn't even see it.
It's valueless, and it means it couldn't sell to any distributor outside of the US. And if it did, look at these numbers. Finland got $51,000 worth of business on this film.
That's bad, even for Finland.
It blows my mind. I'm like, whoever thought this was a good idea was silly. And then shelving it for 2 years, they should have left it on a shelf.
And honestly, they should have. I mean, look at that poster. Just look at it. Who the hell wants to go see that movie?
You know what's funny, and I think I said this Friday, is it kind of looks like classic Lionsgate. It feels like things are kind of healing themselves right now.
Bombsgate.
The problem is you don't want things to heal themselves and go back to Lionsgate being a bomb factory. I mean, that was a bad.
I would rather get back to things being somewhat to where it's like, okay, granted, I knew when 90% of the movies were still going to be garbage, but at least there was that 10% chance we might get something good. Right now, we're at a place where we're lucky if we get a 5 to 1% chance something's going to be good. Deadpool Wolverine is the exception to the rules here, right? Like, yeah.
Of course, if Disney going back to the early 2010s would be the price to pay for Disney going back to normal, it would be a price I would gladly pay, but we're not there. Like, this is the worst of both worlds.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but this is what I'm saying is like looking at that poster, I'm like, that looks like a classic Lionsgate poster that nobody's going to give a crap about. And another property that, because Lionsgate seemed to be the only company that would be willing to take a chance on any of these video game properties.
Well, I mean,
and that's another thing to talk about. Is this another sign, like we've been saying for a while, that there's only so many of these video game properties that are ever going to be able to translate? And this is where I thought for the longest time that I'm not so sure video games are going to be the next big thing, because they've tried it 2 or 3 times now.
Oh, they actually tried it a hell of a lot more than that. But I think
if you go all the way back to Tron,
perfectly illustrates the problem. I mean, you can adapt a video game and have it be a massive hit. There's ample evidence of that working out. But you have to be really meticulous in how you go about doing it. And it's so easy to go wrong, because here's like the thing. You do have to take some level of liberty in order for it to work. But the moment you take too much liberty, like they did here, just in the casting, this movie was doomed. Nothing else matters. It was doomed in the casting. But as Killick69 says, Sonic and Mario were big hits.
But Sonic and Mario are like Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah, they were super simple stories. If you look at the original games, I mean, it was basically just go from the beginning of the level to the end of the level. You have some story beats in between, and those are super easy to develop into a story. Versus a AAA game, you play that from beginning to the end is 24 hours playing time or something like that, and then maybe you have 3, 4, 5 of them. So now you have like a week's worth of playing time, and you're supposed to cut that down into a 2-hour movie. I mean, that's the equivalent of taking a novel like
Last
War
of
and
Us is the
Peace and
only other
deciding
thing
to
I
make
can.
a 20-minute short out of it. I mean, it's not going to go well.
Last of Us is the only other one I can think about that adapted itself, and I think it did well. But I think that had more success with the normie audience who never played the games, probably.
Fallout is the most recent one.
Fallout is another one, but was that a hit?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was a
huge
hit.
Okay.
Fallout was the biggest hit in Amazon Prime history. I know there's many people who like I hated Fallout, so it can't have been a hit. I see that you didn't like it, and that is fine, but it was a hit. Undeniably, it was a hit. It was a massive hit for Amazon.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll have your Silent Hills and your Mortal Kombats, but for every one of those, there's a dozen
and that's no
that
different.
didn't do
Okay,
well.
so I'm going to. You guys are putting on 2020 glasses just a tad too much.
Oh, what are we missing? Tell us.
Well, first of all, as has been quoted frequently, nobody knows anything. This
True.
this movie, while it kind of smelled bad at the beginning, it it might have been okay enough. Like, this is dreadful, but it might have performed better, and no one really knows. Like, you throw it, you go, okay, there's some problematic issues, but people know. I'm going to say the lead actress, whose name I've suddenly forgotten. That's how well I know her. Kate Blanchett. So
Kate
people
Blanchett.
know her. She's kind of cute in the movie. She's good in the trailer. People like Jack Black. People like the comedian that's in it. So there's building blocks in there that a person in Hollywood is going to go, well, we got an Oscar winner, we got this comedian, we got Jack Black doing the voice. From a purely Hollywood perspective, they're going, okay, we have enough people to at least open the movie, which I've talked about before. The concept of opening something, and then the quality of the movie is what dictates whether it stays in the theater or not. I think it's evident that, and you can open it based on a premise. And certainly, again, Hollywood execs are going to go, how many millions of people are playing Borderlands? This is a slam dunk. That's the conversation they're having, right? They're thinking, wow, this is easy. Tons of people are playing Borderland. And then you've got as you said, Andre, the execution issue. And the execution thing is, I have said frequently, the fact that a movie is actually made and made available to the public is more of an accident than anything else. Like, it's just the miracle of making any of this stuff is staggering. And so, and so I'm a bit more sympathetic than you guys are to the way the sausage is made, because you just never know. And it's true that you'll get something that's really stinky. But on the other hand, I saw the pilot being made for Barney Miller, the sitcom, and everyone in the studio audience left before the taping was over, and everyone was going, whoa, this show's going to suck.
No, and that's fair. But the difference you have here is maybe I am looking a bit more 2020 or however you're looking at it.
That's all I'm saying.
But at the end of the day, like, we have we have like 30 plus years worth of video game movies to kind of go by here.
Right.
And we've really hit a point where, seriously, you can only name like a literal handful of them that were actually successful.
My point is that you could point to the same percentage overall of books that were licensed to turn into movies, and the failure rate is huge. So I'm just saying that the failure rate in the realm of video game movies is probably the same.
I don't know, Paul. I disagree there, because we've had this conversation before, because up through the 90s, like, every other movie was based on a book, right? We all knew that. Like, every time you go to the theater, like, that was just the way it worked. They'd write the screenplay, they'd release the book, then the author would get the rights for the movie, blah, blah, blah. It'd go down the road, and they'd even buy the rights sometimes before the book was even out. But then they got to a point where they were trying to adapt properties. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was, what is the property? What is the IP? And this is what Vince Vaughn was talking about. And here's the thing. They jump on these trends, and they've jumped on this trend several times before. That's how we got Street Fighter and Double Dragon, like, Look, I would love to see some of these video games adapted well. I'm not a video game player. Sometimes I'd like to just go see the story. But when I'm watching these movies, when I see half of them, they are just trash. But the
Well,
ones that are successful, the ones that did it right, were stuff like Mortal Kombat,
sure.
where the more recent one I'm talking about, where guess what? That movie didn't cost diddly squat to make. They spent literally peanuts making that movie.
Well,
And it
let's talk
made
about the
a
first
ton of
one.
money.
The first one, I was shocked, number one, that they were going to make it. Number two, I was shocked that it was as good as it was.
For a PG-13, yeah.
Yeah, I was completely shocked at how much fun that movie was. There is, and I'm a Borderlands fan. There is no reason why it couldn't work. But in deference to what you just said, Borderland should have been a Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff.
It kind of was.
With,
But, yeah.
no, yeah, but I'm saying unapologetically, like make it cheap. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the biggest problem I was getting at is, yeah,
And
this
make
movie
it a canon
cost somewhere between
obvious
what 100 and
ripoff.
150 million.
Yeah, and listen, it's a looter shooter. There's plenty in there lore to create an interesting story.
Absolutely.
Well, you
I
have
don't
three.
think anyone is saying don't do it at all, but if you're going to do it, you have to take extra care of it. Like, for
Sure,
instance,
that's
I have never played the game, so I do not know how compelling the story was. I know that Fallout is
no. There's
really
no story.
dense.
It's a looter shooter. You're going from
Well,
one
then a movie should be fine. But then I think they made every other mistake that they possibly could make
Right.
in adapting it. Like I said up front in my post-mortem of it, that I have never played the game. I will not play the game, and I have not seen the movie. But I can say why no one chose to go to see this. And then people filled me in on all the stuff I was missing out on in the comments. And a recurring one there is just the casting, that the movie was completely miscast. And Paul, I see your point of view perfectly. That when from a Hollywood executive point of view, you have like, okay, here we have Kevin Hart. People like Kevin Hart. I think Kevin Hart is awesome. He's fantastic.
Yep.
But then they put him in a role which he, from what I understand from the comments, in no shape or form is suitable for. He has the completely wrong build and he has the completely wrong demeanor for that particular role, from what I understand from the comments. And the same applies to literally every other single character.
Lilith is a bit old.
Casted with famous actors, but not one single actor fits the role and the personality and the quirks of the characters of the game. So then even the built-in audience, they are turned off by this very casting, which on the Hollywood paper is supposed to work. But there you have that missing qualitative factor, which means that there's a disconnect. So just right there, you have the thing that made people tune out. And I submit
Hollywood doesn't see it as a disconnect. They're getting the biggest available name. That's
that's the disconnect, because did they get the biggest available box office for those biggest available names?
That's you're now 2020 hindsighting it.
No. From my point of view, that is up front, because I would be able to say that if I had been familiar with the game, I would be able to say that the moment these people were cast, as the same way that we are able to predict that, okay, this movie, this is gonna bump. And then 2 years later, when it comes out, lo and behold, it bumps. And it bumps for the exact same reasons that we did. From Hollywood's point of view, it's 2020 hindsight, because that's only when it's visible to them. And it's always a crapshoot. Sometimes it works. But 9 times out of 10, when we say this is not going to work for this or that reason, because they have made these things made decisions that we can see will make sense from a Hollywood perspective, but we can see from the point of view as fans that this is not what we want. This is not the experience that we want. This is the name that we like, but the execution is all wrong, so we have no interest. From us, that is something that we can predict in advance. And then, so it's not 2020 hindsight. In this particular case, yeah, maybe, because I wasn't too familiar with the games. But for instance, for something else, like Rings of Power, we were saying that was going to bomb the moment it was announced. Or in my case, the 2011 Conan the Barbarian movie, I was clear that this thing is going to bomb in 2009, and it did, even
Well,
worse than
the
anticipated.
Rings of Power trailer looked like a bomb. I'm not entirely certain that the Borderland trailer was to that same level of bomminess.
Oh, I think it was.
I don't think it was nowhere. That's just my opinion. So I'm just saying that, I made a joke back when I was doing my TV thing that after reading 1,100 scripts, if I turned all of them down, I'd have a perfect 100% track record.
Yeah, this is true. But this is what I mean with the disconnect, because like to a Hollywood executive that lives in a certain kind of world but is separate from the audience, only after the fact will it become audience.
Right.
Like for instance, let's just say that you had been an executive and you had been the one in the position to greenlighting this Borderlands movie, hypothetically, then you would take a look at this cast and say, okay, this takes care of that demographic, this on paper should work. Now, let me give a call to my friends over at Midnight's Edge. Andre, do you know Borderlands? No? Okay, well, can you check with your audience? Do they know Borderlands? Can you just like do a little check? How do they like this? Oh, they hate this. Oh, they would never agree with this. Well, who would they like instead, maybe? Then we could be talking here. And also, this was produced.
Well, the cast. Oh, sorry, Andre.
Avi Arad, he is someone that I have defended for his contributions to Marvel's Renaissance. I have never defended him as a producer. Quite the contrary, he was a producer on this. Same with Eli Roth. I've never defended him as a director.
Well, and let's be real. The
reason knows who you had working behind the scenes here.
And I still say he's a work for hire director here. This was just a manufactured film. This is all about the IP. The reason Jamie Lee Curtis and Cate Blanchett are in this movie and Jack Black's doing a voice and Kevin Hart is in it isn't for the video game people. It's for us. It's for the people who don't play these video games. It's to try and get them into the theaters. But guess what? How did that work out for you? It didn't. But if you had just cast people who actually look and act the character parts, I bet you would have at least got some of the video game people in the theater. But here's the other thing, and this is from somebody who's raised a hardcore gamer. They're not the same audience.
No,
my kid could give two shits about a movie.
Absolutely.
He goes to see a movie when something intrigues him, and most of the time it has nothing to do with video games. The only video game movie that he seemed even remotely interested in seeing was Sonic.
And
but that's because he grew up on Sonic in the cartoon and stuff.
People were not, that didn't start out well. That's a happy success.
So like you only have this, I would say, a small percentage of people anyway, as far as gamers, and it could be a large group considering how big of a group of people gamers are, don't get me wrong, but there's still only that small percentage you're going to get in the door.
Correct.
And that's only if you do it in a way that is so, because that was the thing. I mean, I remember getting into so many disagreements about Mortal Kombat. It's like the more recent one. It's like, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. I said, if I was 15 when I went and seen that movie in theater, like when I got the original, I'd have lost my little fucking mind. Especially when that dude got cut in half the long way, right? Like I would have been like, holy shit, this is the greatest movie ever. So some people were upset with the ending and stuff and how the one character played out. I get that. And I agree they should have stuck with the original script more, but that's neither here nor there. The thing that I feel like that movie got right was they weren't worried about casting a bunch of important actors in those roles. No, what they got was a bunch of people who looked like the characters in the video game.
Well, and look, they had to do a lot of harsh treatment to get those older ladies into those characters, and it just didn't fit. And so visually it was a problem. Now you're supposed to have stark differences in colors and everything else, but you guys pointed out from the poster forward, the visuals on this were not right. It just looked wrong. And you end up with a film that gets a cinema score of a D+ right out the gate. They didn't lean into the first 3 games, nor the Telltale episodic games / graphic novels, whatever you want to call those things. But they didn't lead into any of that. they deviated far away from this, and they put you in a situation in this film where it was so inauthentic that it couldn't even be enjoyed for the ability to mock it and make fun of it.
In other
This
words,
is
Tank Girl is a better movie.
no, by far. Tank Girl's genius compared to this.
Yeah, and it's a shame though, because like I don't want any movies to be bad, even though I have no like affection for the Borderlands brand per se. I want it to be cool. Like it looks like something that could be cool in the right circumstance. Unfortunately, this was paired with the wrong vision and the wrong filmmakers, and they botched it. Simple as that.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.